I saw a lot of movies and TV shows growing up which were about movies, and a lot of them stoked my interest in filmmaking. Films like Adaptation or Tropic Thunder gave me an inside look into the creative process. TV shows like 30 Rock or Episodes portrayed the cutthroat, artistically compromised industry. Boogie Nights, Birdman, Hail Caesar, which I saw when I was a little older, intrigued me with their depictions of the struggles and hardships of celebrity life, while Get Shorty or The Player enthralled me with how producers play the game and navigate the star-studded system. I found these movies fascinating, and I still do. Not only because of the fun world building and movies within movies, but also because of the behind-the-scenes secrets they revealed, showing how filmmaking was achieved, how the tricks were pulled off. The first time I ever remember seeing how the magic was made in Hollywood, however, was not with 1994's Ed Wood or 1988's Cinema Paradiso, but 2005's Bewitched, a film which was marketed as a big screen reboot of the beloved sitcom from the 60s and 70s, but was actually a far more unique film about making a reboot of the beloved sitcom from the 60s and 70s. And it was directed by Nora Ephron. My name is AJ, and for this month's director project, I wanted to look at Nora Ephron's Bewitched and see how her many years of experience in the filmmaking industry allowed her to tell a story which realistically portrayed filmmaking, but also prophetically warned of the ensuing hardships in the years to come. The director project, if you don't know, is a playlist series developed by myself and several other creators on YouTube, where every month we pick a director and all make videos analysing a film, moment, or theme from their career. And for February 2021, we're looking at the queen of rom-coms, Nora Ephron. So be sure to check out the other videos in this month's series, which you can find a link to in the description of this video. And if you want to make your own video analysing a Nora Ephron film, crank it out and tweet it to me at CultPopture to also be featured on this playlist. So, full disclosure, you don't have to have seen Bewitched, the series, or the movie to understand this video. The movie was kind of critically panned when it came out, partially because of its unconventional reboot about making a reboot approach, which maybe audiences weren't ready for in 2005. And while now it's certainly the most captivating thing about the movie, I'm not here to reveal to you that it's an underrated gem or anything. Nolan was last month. I'm simply suggesting that Ephron imbued the film with secrets and lessons learned from a career in the industry. I've never seen the TV series and I've only seen the movie twice. Once recently to prepare for this video, and once when I was 12 in 2005 and my mum rented it on DVD. It was then that a young and even pretty hairy back then AJ saw this scene where Will Ferrell's character Jack Wyatt, a narcissistic actor desperate to crawl back into the spotlight after a string of critical duds, is chewing the scenery during a live studio recording of the fictional Bewitched remake, and this happens.
I think I need a drink.
Freeze! Unfreeze!
I was so caught off guard by this scene. It was something I'd always wondered about when watching things appear out of nowhere in movies, and the answer was so obvious. And yeah, sure, it certainly isn't the only way to make something appear out of nowhere in a movie, and maybe it isn't even the standard approach these days unless you're watching WandaVision, but it definitely is the quickest and easiest way. And it definitely was the way scenes like these were achieved in movies and TV shows before, including the original Bewitched show, which, you know, WandaVision is homaging? An homage to. This was, to be honest, the only scene I remembered from this movie before rewatching it. To be even more honest, 12-year-old hairy AJ was probably too busy playing Neopets, and this very well could have been the only scene I saw from the film, but I never forgot it. In fact, I learned how to do it. Check this out. Alright, well, it's not as easy without a stagehand. CultPopture is a low-scale operation. There are other curious practical techniques used by characters in the movie which provide somewhat compelling insight into how things work in the real-life industry. Things like how to get a dog to look at someone on camera, or how writers come up with jokes on set. It's all relatively interesting, but rewatching the film as an older, even hairier 27-year-old man who has actually spent some time on film sets before, I discovered that these cute little moments of behind-the-scenes movie magic only scratch the surface of what Bewitched has to say about filmmaking. There's a scene where Jack Wyatt, while on the press tour for the upcoming show, appears on Inside the Actors Studio, where James Lipton asks this question.
Tell me about Bewitched.
Some have said it's a crass attempt by the network to market nostalgia.
Rather than take a risk on new ideas.
This line sticks out in the film because not only does it kind of highlight what critics would go on to trash Bewitched for, as well as the myriad of other old TV shows turned blockbusters which dominated the mid-2000s, but also because today, in 2021, this is easily one of the most common complaints people make about the current movie landscape. Film critics have made this complaint for years. Film directors have made this complaint for years. I have made this complaint for years, and relatively recently in previous videos. And sure, maybe this line was a meta-statement made in reference to the scourge of Hollywood remakes from around the same time, something that Bewitched was desperately trying to stand out from. But then in the following decade, superhero movies went on to dominate the box office and pop cultural conversations, Star Wars would get rebooted and divide the fanscape, and Disney would purchase all of this stuff and more, rolling dozens of projects into a conglomerate ball of nostalgic sameness. Not all of the stuff is bad, not by a long shot, and it's not too hard to find creative diamonds in the rough, but media which would rather bank on nostalgia than take risks is easily more common in 2021 than in 2005. I'm not saying Nora Ephron knew the future. Well, actually, I am kind of saying that, but I'm not saying she could look into her crystal ball and see Palpatine returning in The Rise of Skywalker, or that she had magic powers like the witches in the movie, which, by the way, yeah, Nicole Kidman actually is a witch in this movie. It was hilariously cast as the lead in the Bewitched remake without anyone knowing she's actually a witch. It's wild, we'll get to it later. What I am saying is maybe a lifetime of making films, appeasing studio mandates, and working the system allowed Ephron to see trends developing, allowed her to see that remaking Dukes of Hazzard or Starsky and Hutch as big Hollywood blockbusters was only the beginning, and maybe she tried to warn us of this in a movie which ended up clocking an impressive 25% on Rotten Tomatoes. Of course, when a man directed a movie warning of the end of the creative golden age in Hollywood in 2019, he got nominated for an Academy Award, but that's none of my business. Hashtag Bewitched 2005 is better than Tarantino. Hashtag I'm kidding. The film doesn't really comment on the homogenization of blockbusters beyond this scene, but Ephron doesn't leave us with nothing. The answers to Hollywood's creativity problem are instead hidden between the lines of Bewitched's character drama. Bewitched's character drama. See, earlier on in the film, Nicole Kidman's Isabel is so fed up with Will Ferrell, but also, kind of in love with him, and he has spent the whole movie up until this point intentionally hogging the spotlight and downplaying Isabel's contribution to the show, even though she's supposed to be playing Samantha, the witch from the original show, who I assume does all the bewitching. So she cast a spell on him to essentially make him fall in love with her so that she'll be treated more equally on the show, but also so that Nicole Kidman can land Hollywood heartthrob Will Ferrell. The spell works a little too well, and the next day we see that not only does Jack Wyatt insist on spotlighting Isabel, who is doing better with test audiences anyway, but he also proceeds to take her out on a romantic date and wait on her hand and foot. In other words, Isabel's spell makes it so that Jack gives her exactly what she wants. She simply casts a spell, and now he's everything she ever wanted him to be. But it's not real. She recognizes the relationship is unfulfilling. So she undoes the spell and goes back in time a day to deal with things the hard way. And it works. By standing up for herself instead of relying on magic, Isabel not only gets a better role in the show, but creates a genuine relationship with Jack, until she reveals to him that she actually is a witch, and he freaks out. It's then that the film does a really interesting thing, and instead of having Isabel, the protagonist, somehow solve this problem, it puts the onus on Jack, who, after a pretty weird scene where Steve Carell plays like the ghost of an actual character from the Bewitched show, he reconciles with Isabel, having learnt to overcome what he cannot control or understand, and give in to a difficult but organic and ultimately healthier relationship. While not literally about filmmaking, subtextually I feel these character arcs absolutely mirror the kinds of problems around nostalgia, fan service, and creative risks we've seen over the past few years, not only in movies but also in TV and video games. And yes, I know two of those examples were both Star Wars, but I'm really doing the best I can here to not make this video all about Star Wars when it kind of is all about Star Wars, because just like when Star Wars gives the fans supposedly exactly what they want, Isabel finds that having Jack magically fall in love with her is empty. It's not real, it's not genuine, it's manufactured. When she goes the hard route and makes difficult decisions, accepts hard truths, allows her comfort zone to shift, and takes risks, the result is fraught in peril, heartbreak, and upset man babies who are scared of what they don't understand and cry about Luke Skywalker not being cool enough. Ultimately though, the hard road ends up being more satisfying, and despite having to overcome confronting life changes and hardships, the relationship at the end feels real. It feels real that Nicole Kidman would marry Will Ferrell. It's a richer and deeper love that can only be achieved by giving the audience an organic, challenging story instead of just giving them what they want. And I don't know if Hollywood has caught up with this part of the analogy yet. Instead, the equivalent of Will Ferrell's freakout resulted in more fan service, effectively starting the loop again. See, in real life, audiences are not Will Ferrell at the end of the 2005 Bewitched reboot. Thus, still Will Ferrell at the start of the 2005 Bewitched reboot. There's nothing wrong with big blockbusters wanting to please their audiences. That's what they're for. But if we're unwilling to allow for those blockbusters to challenge us and take us to new places and tell us new stories, then Hollywood is going to continue to give us what we want, nostalgia, instead of what we need, original stories. Please God, original stories. Bewitched is a very interesting film and one that feels at odds with itself. It's a film which will condemn nostalgia for nostalgia's sake, but then have a character from the TV show, which is fictional in the world of the film, show up to save the day and be funny. It's a film which I think was maybe ever so slightly ahead of its time, and its self-deprecating satire was something that was maybe only clear to the director and not the studio, who just wanted to cash in on mums like mine who loved the original show growing up. Ironically, it was critically condemned for some of this risk-taking, an ominous sign of things to come. This meta behind-the-scenes approach is kind of bullshit. I should have just done a normal video essay. That's what people would have wanted. Thank you so much for watching Cult Popture's addition to the Nora Ephron Director Project playlist. Please subscribe if you haven't already and like the video and share it with your friends. And if you want to make your own Director Project video, just make a video about Nora Ephron. You can pick anything you want that has to do with her filmography or her career and tweet it to me over at @CultPopture and we'll throw it on the playlist. And if you want a hint for what the next month's Director Project is, here's one that you will never guess.